Imagine this. You walk into a room. Maybe it's a friend's housewarming party or a high-stakes board meeting. And within approximately 0.4 seconds, you've already done a full tactical sweep. You've identified every exit. You've noticed that the person in the corner is slightly clenching their jaw, suggesting they're about to start an argument. You've detected a 3% shift in the room's vibe because the host's laughter sounded just a tiny bit more forced than it did 10 minutes ago. You aren't a secret agent, and you aren't being paranoid. You're just operating on a highly specialized neural frequency that most people can't even hear. If you've ever been told you're too sensitive or overthinking things, I want you to take a deep breath. You aren't too much. You are likely navigating life with a brain that was forged in what psychologists call a high-contingency environment. For most kids, a parent's bad mood is just a rainy afternoon. Unfortunate, but it passes. But for those of us raised by toxic, unpredictable, or emotionally volatile parents, that bad mood wasn't just weather. It was a Category 5 hurricane that determined whether or not you were safe that night. Today, we're moving past the labels. We aren't here to talk about trauma in a way that makes you feel like a victim. Instead, we're looking at the neuroscience of your survival. We're going to explore why you think, react, and even breathe the way you do, and why those quirks you've spent years trying to fix might actually be your greatest hidden strengths. Let's start with the hardware. Your brain is the most incredible adaptation machine in the known universe. It doesn't want you to be happy, though that's a nice bonus. Its primary job is to keep you alive. When you grow up in a home where love is conditional, meaning you had to do something or be someone to get it, or where the atmosphere is unpredictable, your prefrontal cortex undergoes a fascinating process called forced maturation. The prefrontal cortex is the CEO of your brain. It's responsible for complex problem-solving, impulse control, and predicting outcomes. Usually, this part of the brain takes its sweet time to develop, usually until your mid-20s. But if you grew up in a household where you had to predict if dad was going to be fun dad or angry dad based on the sound of his footsteps, your brain couldn't wait until you were 25. It had to go into overdrive at age 7. Researchers have found that children in these environments learn to think 3 or 4 steps ahead of their peers. You weren't just playing tag, you were playing 4D chess with the adults in the house. This is known as hypervigilance. In the wild, hypervigilance keeps a deer from getting eaten by a lion. In your adult life, it often looks like an uncanny, almost psychic ability to manage crises. You're the person who spots a project's failure 6 weeks before it happens. You're the one who stays calm when the office is on fire because, let's be honest, you've dealt with much scarier fires before you even knew how to drive. You aren't just good under pressure. Your brain learned early on that predicting a consequence in real time was the only way to create a buffer between an action and a painful outcome. You didn't have the luxury of being a carefree kid. You were a tiny, unpaid analyst. And that analysis? It's a superpower now. This leads to a trait that is as fascinating as it is exhausting: mechanical intuition. Think about a bike. If the chain slips, you flip it upside down and fix it. For many of us, humans were the bikes. We learned to fix the moods of the adults around us to ensure our own peace. You became an expert at reading micro-expressions, the slight narrowing of the eyes, the tension in a shoulder, the specific decibel of a sigh. Isn't it wild how we can identify exactly who is walking down the hallway just by the rhythm of their footsteps? That's not a normal skill, but for us, it's like a second language. In psychology, this is linked to a heightened activation of the amygdala, the brain's alarm system. While most people are relaxing at a party, your amygdala is scanning the room for intermittent reinforcement. This is a psychological term for a maybe. It's the most addictive and draining cycle in existence. It's why slot machines are so successful. You don't win every time, but you win sometimes. And that sometimes keeps you pulling the lever. If you grew up with a parent who was loving one minute and cold the next, you were essentially gambling for emotional stability every single day. As an adult, this means you are incredibly attuned to others. You are likely the most empathetic person in your friend group. You can feel someone's discomfort before they even realize they're uncomfortable. The trick is learning how to turn the alarm off when you're finally safe. Before we dive into how this affects your bank account, yes, really, I want to pause and check in with you. Many people who grew up in these high-pressure, unpredictable environments find themselves drawn to very specific, solitary hobbies as adults. These are usually activities where you have total control. There are no hidden moods in a line of code. There are no unpredictable outbursts from a garden of tomato plants. Maybe it's coding, or woodworking, or restorative solo travel where you don't have to check in with anyone. Maybe it's meticulously organizing your digital photo library, or playing a simulation game where you're the literal god of a tiny city. Tell me in the comments, what is that one non-typical hobby or activity that makes you feel completely safe and in charge of your own world? I'm genuinely curious. I've seen some of the coolest, most niche hobbies come from this community. Let's talk about your internal thermostat. If you grew up in a house filled with high-stakes emotional noise, shouting, tension, the silent treatment, or just constant chaos, your dopamine system actually recalibrates. Your brain develops a very low stimulation preference. Think of it like this. Your childhood was a heavy metal concert. As an adult, you don't want more music, you want silence. While your coworkers might be dying to go to a crowded, loud nightclub on a Friday night to get a buzz, that sounds like a literal nightmare to you. You reach optimal stimulation much faster. For you, a single quiet evening with a book, a warm lamp, and a cat isn't boring. It's a high-level hit of dopamine. Psychologists call this unsociability. It's different from being antisocial. Antisocial means you dislike people or want to cause trouble. Unsociability is a confident preference for your own company. You aren't running away from people because you're scared. You are running toward the only place where the rules don't suddenly change. Yourself. You are your own safe harbor. So the next time you feel guilty for canceling plans to stay home and stare at your plants, remember, you're not being weird. You're just enjoying the peace you finally earned. Now, this is something people rarely talk about. The economic and professional impact of this psychological rewiring. If you grew up without a reliable safety net, either financially or emotionally, you likely developed what psychologists call defensive pessimism. You probably have multiple income streams, or you're obsessed with professional competence. You might have a burn-it-all-down fund in a savings account that nobody knows about. This doesn't necessarily come from an entrepreneurial spirit or a love of the hustle. It comes from a deep-seated belief that nothing lasts. You saw how easily systems, like a family, can fail. You don't trust company loyalty because you know that people can change their minds in an instant. Instead, You become fiercely, almost obsessively loyal to your own skill set. You make sure you are the most valuable, most indispensable person in the room. Why? Because if you're indispensable, you're not disposable. You are building a fortress of competence so that the rug can never be pulled out from under you again. While this can lead to burnout if you aren't careful, it also makes you a formidable force in the professional world. You are the one people turn to when things go sideways because you've been preparing for sideways since the 3rd grade. However, there's a flip side to this self-reliance. It often creates what we call a shield of irony or emotional armor. Do you struggle to ask for help? Do you feel a physical sense of ick when someone offers to do something for you? It's not because you're arrogant. It's because in your brain, asking for help feels like admitting defeat. Or worse, it feels like giving someone else leverage over you. In a toxic environment, favors usually come with strings attached. I did this for you, so now you owe me your soul, was the unspoken contract. Cognitive psychologists call this deeper encoding. When survival strategies are learned through intense effort and emotional stakes, they become permanently integrated into your identity. You learned to solve your own problems when you were 8 years old. So at 38 or 48, the idea of depending on a partner or a friend feels fundamentally risky. It's like trying to learn to walk on a tightrope without a net. Your brain screams that it's a bad idea. Healing isn't about learning to be weak. It's about learning that you're finally in a room where you don't need the armor anymore. It's okay to take the helmet off every once in a while. I know we've covered a lot of heavy stuff, but I want to end on the most important part. The beautiful side of this rewiring. People who have navigated these transitional emotional landscapes, the high contingency, high stakes environments, often possess a rare kind of emotional bilingualism. You can navigate intense, high-pressure environments with the best of them, but you also possess a profound, soul-deep appreciation for peace. You don't take a boring Tuesday for granted. You find genuine, sparkling joy in small, controlled rituals. The exact way the light hits a specific corner of your room at 4 p.m. The perfect, predictable routine of grinding your coffee beans. The feeling of fresh sheets that you bought in a house you pay for, where you make the rules. You aren't broken. You aren't damaged goods. You are a highly adapted individual. You are a person who has learned to find depth over noise and peace over performance. Your childhood gave you a map of the dark. And now that you're in the light, you appreciate the sun in a way people who have always lived in the light never will. You have a perspective that is grounded, resilient, and, dare I say, a bit witty. You've seen the worst of human behavior, and you've chosen to be better. That is a miracle. If you recognized your own internal world in these descriptions, if you felt a little called out, or if you finally feel like someone gets it, I want you to do something for me. Type the word relief in the comments. It's a small, simple way to acknowledge to yourself and this community that these traits aren't just weird quirks or flaws. They are documented, logical, and brilliant psychological responses to your journey. You did what you had to do to survive. And now, you get to use those same skills to thrive.